Hi, this is Steve Rigolosi, and tonight on Forgotten Mysteries, I have for you Kill Me Again with an exclamation point by John Bentley. And this is copyright 1947 by Dodd and Mead, and it is part of their Red Badge Mystery imprint. The logo here on the spine is a little bit faded, but we'll talk a little bit more about publishing history and this imprint at the end of this video. I'm going to keep the review kind of short, famous last words, so we can talk about the imprint. So John Bentley, not a towering figure in the mystery world, only wrote a handful of books, most of them starring his series character, Glen Gibson. And this book was originally published in the UK under the title of Call Off the Corpse, which I kind of like that title better. I like the alliteration. There's something funny about books that have an exclamation point in the title. I never can quite take them seriously. You know, when you're an editor, one of the first things you learn is that, too many exclamation points make you look hysterical as a writer. When you get an email with a million exclamation points, you think you're conversing with somebody who's bouncing off the walls. And I can think of a few books with exclamation points in their titles. There was a Clive Cussler book I read years ago called Raise the Titanic with an exclamation point. There's a Leslie Egan book, Some Avenger Rise with an exclamation point. And here we have Kill Me Again. So I don't really have too much to say about this book. I can't really recommend it just because I found it so completely predictable in sort of every way. But I'll tell you a little bit about the plot. So, and there are one or two interesting things about it. It takes place in New York City and Long Island, kind of those, beautiful, wealthy suburbs out on Long Island with those beautiful views of the ocean. And that setting is nicely rendered, I thought. So that's a point in Bentley's favor. It turns out our victim, Alice Hurstel, she's a little bit, I guess, before her time in that she has made a lot of money and can afford this mansion on Long Island because she is a professional usurer, meaning, she lends out money at an extortionate rate, and these ridiculous interest rates make her a lot of money. So, when she does it or when a credit card company does it, it's illegal. But then when the mafia does it, it's illegal. I'm not saying the mafia is good. I'm just saying, we have different standards for legality. And she is our victim here in the book, and it's sort of a typical locked room murder case. And it seems like these locked rooms always have French doors out onto a patio or windows, something that's going to allow you to get to the bottom of the locked room mystery. And the locked room mystery here is very, very standard. It's not going to give you anything you haven't seen before or make you gasp with its ingenuity. There's this set of kind of keystone cops who are investigating her murder. The first is her lawyer, who is the lead character here. His name is Glen Gibson. And he's one of those lawyer/investigator types that we see in mysteries so much. And then he's also working the case with the district attorney, Hale, and then two other guys, local policemen, Rayburn and Boylan. And the cast is very much what you would expect. Alice lives with her brother, who is paralyzed and gets around in a wheelchair. And then she has a niece and nephew who live with her because her sister passed away. So very convenient to have poor relations in the house with you. None of these people like each other very much. Also living on her estate is her doctor, Dr. Marling, who she basically gives him the guest cottage on her estate because she wants a doctor at her beck and call. She's a hypochondriac. She wants him stopping in every morning or every night to just check her out, make sure she's not at death's door. And not a well-liked woman, so when she is found dead, there aren't many tears shed, and not much rending of the garments or much care at all. There's a lot of like, oh well, Aunt Alice, you're gone. Let's get on with our lives. But of course, the police. It's a murder. She's been stabbed in the chest with an envelope slicer in the shape of a dagger. Again, that's been done 1,000 times. And it turns out she's also been poisoned by chloral hydrate. So the question becomes, was she murdered twice? Hence the title, Kill Me Again. Did one person try to poison her and another person try to, stab her through the chest? Did the same person do both, thinking, well, if one doesn't work, the other will? And the book proceeds very, very linearly through this investigation, in which there are almost no surprises whatsoever. But I can live with that. There are books where, you're reading kind of, something that's golden age-ish, that ticks the boxes but doesn't feel like a masterwork or anything beyond the norm. But there are a couple things about this book that kind of made me want to scream. The first is that the character of Glen Gibson is always referred to as Glen Gibson. Never Glenn, never Gibson. It's always Glen Gibson. So you will see the phrase Glen Gibson 5, 6, 7 times a page. It wears thin really quickly. I don't know why authors do this. I've seen it done in one or two other places. I read a Thomas Perry book where he referred to one of his characters by first name and last name consistently. I don't know. I think it might be a sign that the author doesn't understand his relationship to his character, right? If he called him Gibson, that would make Gibson give him more of a professional PI lawyer kind of feel to him. Or if he was referred to as Glenn, it would be more of an every guy, an everyman working on the case or whatever. But calling him Glen Gibson multiple times on every page, I was like, stop, please stop. You're making me crazy. But it happens from the first page to the last. The second is, I was kind of amazed at how this book dovetailed, not in a great way, with something else that's going on in my life. And you all know, I never read in a vacuum. I don't know where I got this idea in my head, but I was reminded of the fact that when I was growing up, everybody loved the sitcom MASH. And its series finale took place when I was in high school. I remember I was at high school at night for some activity, and everybody snuck out to go watch the ending of MASH. And I never liked it. I never really quite got it. But I thought to myself just recently, I was in a thrift store and they had the second season of MASH DVD set for $2. And I thought, here's my chance to go back and find out what all of the excitement was about, because it is, this highly respected sitcom, in American television history. And I have to tell you, I watched the first 4 or 5 episodes. I could not stand them. I mean, I found them as unfunny and as labored and difficult to watch as I did umpteen years ago. And I can explain why. It's a bunch of overgrown idiots running around acting like fools. And what I particularly cannot take is Alan Alda and his every single word that comes out of his mouth is a sarcastic response. Everything. I can't stand that. I mean, it's like if you've known a sarcastic person in life, and all you want to do is get away from them because you can't stand the levels of sarcasm. That's how I feel about Hawkeye, and even Trapper John, who I liked a little bit more. And that is what Glen Gibson is. He is a wise ass. He's sarcastic. Nothing comes out of his mouth that is not a sarcastic rejoinder, and never funny. And there's this supposedly this comic interplay between him and the other three investigators. And instead of it being, in a situation like that where the characters have chemistry with each other and play off each other well, these were just four annoying guys not playing off each other very well. So between the dull mystery, the annoying characters, the sarcasm on every page, the incessant repetition of the name Glen Gibson, who I kept calling in my mind Glenn Gould, the classical pianist, I just said to myself, Steve, this is not the book for you. I gave it the old college try, but I have to let my viewers know that with all of the wonderful books out there, if you're looking to try something new, I do not think John Bentley is the man to try for all the reasons that I've said. That said, if you love MASH and you love wiseassery and you love sarcasm, then I say go for it. This is the book for you, but it was not the book for me. So I promised this review would be pretty short because I wanted to talk a little bit about, on some other videos I've talked about the great classic mystery imprints, and Dodd and Mead and their Red Badge Mystery are a classic imprint. And you can see it is advertised on the back cover here, which is nice. Like a lot of the other books of this era also advertise books from their list on their back cover. And here you can see some really big names like Freeman Wills Crofts, who wrote The Cask, is here. There's really no other big names on here, but you can see it says Red Badge Mysteries, published in spring of 1947. So I always like when a publisher markets its other books on its back cover and its jacket. It's also interesting to point out that Red Badge had a biannual, twice yearly mystery contest where you could submit a mystery, and if you won the prize, you got $1,000 and you got a contract, and your book got published. And that led to the start of some very successful careers. For example, Hugh Pentecost, his first book, Cancelled in Red, won the prize and launched Pentecost on a very prolific career. I think St. Martin's / Minotaur does that now. I think they still have an annual contest. But Dodd and Mead did it first and launched a lot of people. Some names you would recognize, some you won't. There's a listing of some of the prize winners here. Christiana Brand, who's pretty well known, was a winner. Some of these names, though, have fallen into the dustbin of history. Hangman's Hill by Franklin Pell. Never heard of him. The Man with the Lumpy Nose by Lawrence Larrier. Not a title that particularly appeals to me. But that's a little bit about the Red Badge. And Dodd and Mead published some really great writers too, like Agatha Christie. Dodd and Mead was her American publisher. But what I want to talk about here is this. There's a blurb on the back that I want to read to you. It says, it's from the Saturday Review of Literature, and it says, and I quote, "The Dodd Mead imprint has long been a pretty good hallmark in detective and mystery stories. When you see one with that publisher's name on the back, you can usually depend on it. Somewhere in the editorial offices of that firm is some hard-faced Legree who understands the rather exacting requirements. And so note how that blurb there says they get it right most of the time, and most of the books are pretty good, but it doesn't say, "Oh, hail the red badge, it is a sign of perfection in mystery publishing." Blurbs back then were much more sedate than they are today. I mean, the blurbs today are they've gotten so ridiculous. I mean, tell me if you disagree with me, but I see these blurbs and my eyes roll so far in the back of my head. I'm like, really, it's really not, what it's made out to be by the blurbs. But I also want to point out to you that on the, so in announcing here on the copyright page or opposite the title page, there's information about the $1,000 contest. And I'm going to read you another bit. It says, the 8-point test. Each year, hundreds of detective story manuscripts are submitted to Dodd, Mead & Company. From these, only a very small number receive the coveted red badge imprint, because everyone must first pass a rigid 8-point test, so severe that all but absolutely first-class mysteries are eliminated. Copies of this 8-point test will be mailed without charge. Interesting to have a company's editorial philosophy codified, put down in 8 points. And so I hunted high and low to try to find out what these 8 points were. And lo and behold, I found them. So I'm going to read them to you. And as I read them to you, I'm just going to tell you how well I think this book fulfills each criterion. So here we go. And I printed this out on a large enough font that I can read it without my glasses. So, number 1, a sense of reality is imperative. So, okay, that makes sense to me. You want to feel like you're anchored in the real world. This book, it's a golden age mystery, but the setting is believable enough. The characters are typed, but they're believable enough. So I would say, okay, that I can check that one off. Number 2, the book must be written in competent English. Well, that alone will knock 99 out of 100 manuscripts off of the stack. But this book is written in competent English, even if it's not, any great shakes. Number 3, the climax of the story should preferably come as a surprise. That's a criterion I really like. And there's such a limited cast. Would I say that the ending came really as a surprise? No, you could have figured it out enough. I guess in one way you could say that's fair play. But this was not a book given to twists and surprises, although it says that it does on its inside front flap, but it really doesn't. Number 4, the novel should avoid banalities. This one fails that test. There was sort of a banality on every page. It just was not, like I said, there's nothing about this book that made me tingle with its sense of being on the avant-garde or the cutting edge or doing something different that hadn't been done 100 times before. So I give this one a thumbs down. Number 5, action should move steadily. There's really not much action in this book. It's a lot of jabbering among these 4 guys, all trying to outdo each other with snappy comebacks. I've told you how annoying I found that. So I would not say action moves steadily here. 6, the detective is the most important figure in the story. And, okay, makes sense to me. It's almost like a precursor to what we're so obsessed with today, our series characters, right? Go to mystery conventions and you have every writer talking about, oh, my John Smith mystery, my Mary Doe mystery, right? It's all about getting the detective's name out there in the world. And so Glen Gibson is the most important figure here. Everything is sort of observed through his eyes, but because he's not so likable and not much of a raconteur, it doesn't work in this book for me. Number 7, the crime should be murder or potential murder. That is, we can check that box. At some point, I'll do my own criteria for what I look in a book, what I look for in a book. But I believe that you can have really great mysteries without murder. I think it takes a very clever writer to do them, but you can write great mysteries without murders. Probably a very famous example of that is A Dram of Poison by Charlotte Armstrong. I have a copy of it, which I would have showed you if I had thought to get it out of my case before making this video. But trust me, I have it. And the cover is actually not very nice, but I have a very nice copy of that book. And then number 8, it must be entertaining. So it's important, that a publisher realizes that people want to be entertained by these books, that it has to be a good story. And was I entertained by this book? Not really. I mean, it kind of felt like a chore to me, but there are those, like I said, who might like it. Those people who like MASH might really chime with this book very, very easily or quickly, but it just did not suit my taste. So that's what I've got for you tonight. I've got John Bentley, Kill Me Again. I've got the Dodd Mead Red Badge Mystery imprint, which launched some great names. We've got their $1,000 biannual contest, which is fun. Might be interesting to see if anyone could do that again nowadays. And you've got the 8 points, which make sense, but aren't particularly earth-shattering. There's not a thunderbolt of inspiration that makes you think, oh. Like, to me, these 8 points are almost like the foundation. If you don't have these, you don't really have anything. But for a good book, you've got to be able to do much more. There really isn't anything about character in this listing. There isn't anything about conflict or the importance of plot or the joy of red herrings or all these other things that we mystery readers tend to respond really well to. But it is an interesting point of a history. So I'm glad I was able to bring you that if you didn't already know it. And I will be back next time with another forgotten mystery. Hopefully one that I like better than I like this one. Okay, thanks and good night.